I never thought a cracked phone screen would be the thing that opened my eyes to a truth I had spent years refusing to see. Sometimes the biggest changes in our lives do not arrive with warnings. They do not come with loud arguments or dramatic moments. Sometimes they come quietly. Sometimes they arrive in the form of a small favor you do for someone you love. For me, that small favor was taking my daughter-in-law's phone to a repair shop. At the time, I thought I was helping her. I thought I was doing what family members do. I had no idea that inside that phone was a secret that would force me to question everything I believed about my own family. My name is Martha Williams. I am 67 years old, and for most of my life, I believed I understood people. I believed that kindness created kindness. I believed that when you welcomed someone into your family with an open heart, they would protect that bond the same way you protected them. Maybe that belief came from the way I was raised. My parents taught me that family was not something you walked away from easily. They taught me that people make mistakes, but love gives us the patience to forgive. And I carried that lesson with me my entire life. I spent more than 30 years working as a school counselor, helping children understand their emotions and helping families find their way through difficult moments. People often told me I was good at seeing the best in others, but what nobody told me was that sometimes seeing the best in people can make you ignore the truth right in front of you. After my husband Robert passed away, my home became quieter. For years, that house had been filled with his laughter, his stories, and the sound of him walking through the door after a long day. Losing him changed me, but one thing kept me going: my son, David. David was my greatest blessing. From the moment he was born, I knew he was special. He was a gentle child, the type of person who would stop to help someone struggling with groceries, the type of person who cared about people even when he had nothing to gain. I worked hard to raise him with good values. And when he became an adult, I was proud of the man he became. Then he met Elena. The first time David introduced me to her, I remember exactly how she walked into my home. She was confident, she was polite, she carried herself with grace. But what stood out most was how she treated me. She did not act like I was just her boyfriend's mother. She made me feel important. "Martha," she said that day, "David talks about you all the time. He says you are the strongest woman he knows." Those words touched my heart, because every mother wants to know that her sacrifices mattered. Over time, Elena became more than my son's wife. She became someone I trusted. She called me when she needed advice. She asked about my health. She remembered small details about my life. When she and David got married, I truly believed my family had grown. I gained a daughter. At least, that was what I thought. When David and Elena needed a place to stay temporarily while they saved money for their own home, I did not hesitate. I opened my doors. I told them they were welcome. I remember Elena standing in my living room, looking around and saying, "Martha, you have created such a beautiful home." I smiled. But she did not know that house was not beautiful because of the furniture. It was beautiful because of the memories. Every corner held a piece of my life. The kitchen where Robert and I cooked together, the hallway where David took his first steps, the backyard where we celebrated birthdays. That house was more than a building. It was everything my husband and I built together, and I never imagined someone would look at it and see only value. For months, everything seemed normal. David worked hard. Elena took care of the home. We had family dinners. We laughed together. But looking back now, there were small things I ignored. Things I noticed but explained away. The way Elena would quickly turn her phone screen away whenever I entered a room. The way she sometimes asked questions about my finances. The way she seemed unusually interested in my husband's old investments. At the time, I thought she was simply curious. I thought she wanted to understand the family she married into. I never imagined she was gathering information. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning. I was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee when Elena walked in holding her phone. She looked frustrated. "Martha, can I ask you for a favor?" I smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. What happened?" She handed me the phone. "The screen cracked yesterday. I need it repaired quickly. There are important things on there." I looked at the damage. The phone was still working, but the screen was badly broken. "Don't worry," I told her. "I'll take it to Jason." Jason Reed owned a small electronics repair shop nearby. I had known him for years. He was honest, patient, and careful with people's personal belongings. Elena smiled. "Thank you. I knew I could count on you." Those words stayed with me. Because I trusted her. I placed the phone inside my purse and drove to Jason's shop. I walked in expecting a simple repair. I expected to wait. I expected Jason to hand me back the phone and tell me everything was fixed. But what happened next was something I never saw coming. Jason greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Williams, good to see you again." I smiled. "Good to see you too, Jason. I need your help with this." I handed him Elena's phone. He examined the damage. "No problem. I should have this ready soon." I sat in the waiting area. For the first few minutes, everything was normal. Jason worked quietly. Then something changed. The room became unusually quiet. I looked up. Jason was no longer repairing the screen. He was staring at the phone. His expression had completely changed. Concern, confusion, almost disbelief. I stood up. "Jason, is something wrong?" He didn't answer immediately. He looked at the phone again. Then he looked at me. "Mrs. Williams," his voice sounded different. "What?" He slowly placed the phone on the counter. "Is this your phone?" I shook my head. "No. It belongs to my daughter-in-law, Elena Williams." The moment I said her name, Jason became even more serious. "Elena Williams?" "Yes." He took a deep breath. "Mrs. Williams, I don't want to make assumptions, but while repairing this phone, I found something unusual." I felt a strange feeling in my chest. "What do you mean?" "There are files that were deleted, messages that someone tried to remove." I stared at him. "Deleted messages?" He nodded. "Yes." I tried to stay calm. "Maybe it's nothing." Jason looked at me carefully. "Maybe, but there are conversations here that involve your family." My heart started beating faster. "My family?" He nodded slowly. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Ma'am, someone in your house isn't who you think they are." And in that moment, standing inside a small repair shop, I realized something. The phone I brought there to fix was not broken. It was my understanding of my own family that was about to break. Before we continue deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming amazing videos, because this was only the beginning, and the truth hidden inside that phone was something I would never be able to forget. After Jason Reed said those words, I stood there trying to convince myself that I had misunderstood him. "Someone in your house isn't who you think they are." Those words sounded impossible, because in my mind, there were only 3 people living under that roof. My son, David, my daughter-in-law, Elena, and me. I had spent years believing that my home was the one place where I was completely safe. The place where I could remove the mask I wore for the outside world. The place where I could trust the people around me without question. But suddenly, that feeling was gone. I looked at Jason and asked the question I was afraid to ask. "What exactly did you find?" Jason did not answer immediately. I could tell he was choosing his words carefully. "Mrs. Williams, I want you to understand something. I repair phones every day. I see personal information all the time. I don't look through people's private things." I nodded. I believed him. "I only noticed these files because whoever deleted them didn't completely remove them. When I was checking the phone's storage, some information appeared." "What kind of information?" He looked at the screen. "Messages." I felt my stomach tighten. "Between who?" Jason looked uncomfortable. "The phone owner and someone else." "Elena?" He nodded. Hearing her name made my heart sink. Because even though I already suspected something was wrong, a part of me was still hoping I was wrong. I wanted Jason to tell me that the messages were harmless, that there was a simple explanation, that I had spent the last few minutes worrying over nothing. But instead, he said, "Mrs. Williams, there are conversations that suggest Elena has been discussing your personal situation with another person." My hands became cold. "My personal situation?" "Yes." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" Jason looked at the screen again. "There are conversations about your home, your finances, your future plans." I felt a wave of confusion. Why would Elena discuss those things? Why would my daughter-in-law be interested in information that belonged to me? I tried to defend her. I know that sounds strange now. But when you love someone, your first reaction is often to protect them. "Maybe she was asking someone for advice," I said. Jason didn't argue. Instead, he simply replied, "Maybe." But the way he said it told me he didn't believe that was the whole story. "Can you show me?" Jason hesitated. "Mrs. Williams, are you sure?" I nodded. "I need to know." He showed me a small portion of the recovered messages. The first thing I noticed was a contact name. It wasn't a real name. It was only one letter, R. One message stood out. I have been patient. We need to make sure everything goes according to plan. I read it again, then again. According to plan. What plan? I looked at Jason. Who is R? I don't know yet. What else is there? Jason scrolled carefully. There are mentions of documents. My heart dropped. Documents? Yes. What kind of documents? He shook his head. I haven't opened everything. I wanted you to know first. I appreciated that. Because Jason understood something important. This was not just information. This was my life. I picked up Elena's phone after he finished checking it. It looked exactly the same. Same case, same cracked screen, same device I had held many times. But now it felt different, because I knew it carried a secret. On my way home, my mind was filled with questions. When did Elena start hiding things? Had she always been this way, or had something changed? I thought about all the times she called me Mom, all the times she hugged me, all the times I told people how blessed I was to have such a loving daughter-in-law. I wondered if those moments were real. When I arrived home, Elena was sitting in the living room. She looked up immediately. Did you get it fixed? I smiled. Yes. She reached for the phone. Thank you so much, Martha. I watched her closely. Before, I would have simply handed it over. But this time, I noticed everything. The way she grabbed it quickly. The way she checked the screen. The way her eyes moved from one place to another. She wasn't checking if the phone worked. She was checking something else. Is everything okay? I asked. She looked at me. Of course. Why? I smiled. No reason. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Jason's words. Someone in your house isn't who you think they are. Around midnight, I heard movement outside my bedroom. At first, I thought it was David, but then I heard Elena's voice. Quiet. Almost like she didn't want anyone to hear. I got out of bed and moved closer to the door. I wasn't trying to listen, but then I heard a name. Marcus. I froze. Elena was talking to someone named Marcus. I told you everything is still under control, she whispered. There was a pause. Then she said, no, she doesn't know. My heart started beating faster. Who was she talking about? Then I heard the sentence that made me understand the conversation was about me. Martha trusts me completely. I stepped away from the door, because that was the moment something inside me changed. I was no longer trying to find reasons to defend Elena. I was trying to find the truth. The next morning I acted normal. I smiled. I cooked breakfast. I asked David about his day. But inside, I was paying attention. I started noticing things I had ignored before. Elena never left her phone unattended. She avoided certain questions. She became nervous whenever I mentioned family finances. And then I remembered something. A few months earlier, Elena had asked me about my husband's investments. At the time, I thought she was interested in our family's history. Now I wondered if she was collecting information. Later that week, I returned to Jason's shop. I needed answers. Jason, I need to know who Marcus is. He looked at me seriously. I was hoping you wouldn't ask that. Why? Because I think the answer may hurt you. I looked at him. I already know something is wrong. I need the truth. Jason nodded. I started looking into the information connected to that name. And Marcus Reed has a history with Elena. I waited. How long? Before David. I felt a pain in my chest. Before David. That meant Elena had a connection to someone else before my son ever entered her life. But that was not the worst part. Jason continued. Mrs. Williams, Marcus isn't just someone from her past. I looked at him. What is he? Jason took a breath. Someone who has been asking questions about your family for months. And in that moment, I knew. The phone had not revealed a simple secret. But it had opened the door to something much bigger. Something that had been happening quietly inside my own home. And I was about to discover just how deep the betrayal went. When Jason told me that Marcus Reed had been asking questions about my family for months, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not anger, not fear. Disappointment. Because there is a special kind of pain that comes when you realize someone you trusted may have been studying your life instead of sharing it with you. I drove home that day in silence. The streets looked the same. The people walking by looked the same. But my world felt different. I kept thinking about the small moments I had shared with Elena, the conversations over coffee, the times she asked me about my husband's memories, the times she sat beside me and told me how grateful she was to have me in her life. I started questioning everything. Was she truly building a relationship with me? Or was she only getting closer because she wanted something? When I arrived home, I found David sitting in the living room. He looked exhausted. "Mom," I immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" He looked away. "It's Elena." My heart sank. "What about her?" "I don't know." That answer surprised me, because David had always been certain about everything. I feel like I don't know my own wife anymore. Those words hurt me, because I knew exactly what he was feeling. I sat beside him. "Tell me what happened." He took a deep breath. I asked her why she has been acting differently. What did she say? She said I was imagining things. I stayed quiet. And then she asked me if you had been saying anything about her. I looked at him. "About me?" He nodded. "She wanted to know if you had talked to me." My heart sank. Because now I knew Elena was worried. She wasn't just hiding something. She was watching what we knew. "David, did you tell her?" "No." I nodded. "Good." He looked confused. "Mom, what is going on?" I knew the time had come. I couldn't keep protecting him from the truth while the truth was already affecting his life. So I told him about Jason. I told him about the phone. I told him about the messages. I told him about Marcus. I watched my son's face change. At first he looked confused, then shocked, then hurt. "No." That was the only word he could say. "No, Mom." I understood, because I had reacted the same way. "David?" "Elena wouldn't do that." His voice cracked. I reached for his hand. I wanted to believe that too. He stood up and walked across the room. "My wife? I don't know everything yet." "Then why are you telling me this?" The pain in his voice broke my heart. "Because I love you." He stopped. "I love you too. And because I don't want you to discover this when it's too late." David sat down again. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he asked, "Who is Marcus?" I looked at him. "I don't know. But Elena knows him." "Yes." He covered his face with his hands. The son I knew was struggling right in front of me. I wanted to take away his pain, but some truths cannot be hidden forever. A few days later, Jason contacted me again. This time, his voice sounded more serious than before. "Mrs. Williams, I found something." I immediately knew it was important. "What is it?" "I found a connection between Marcus and Denise Harper." I froze. "Denise?" "Yes." I sat down. Denise had been my friend for years. She had visited my home. She had attended family events. She had comforted me after my husband's death. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "What connection?" Jason explained. "Marcus and Denise had been communicating about your property." I closed my eyes. My property. That was the one thing connecting everyone. The phone, the messages, the questions, the documents. Everything came back to my house. But why? Why would people who claimed to care about me want information about something that belonged to me? That evening, I decided to look through my personal documents. I wasn't searching for proof against Elena. I was checking if something was missing. And then I found it. A folder was gone. The folder containing important financial records, my husband's investment information, documents I kept safe for years. I searched every drawer, every cabinet, every place I stored important papers. It was gone. I stood there realizing something painful. Someone had been inside my private things. Someone I trusted. That night, I confronted no one. I didn't call Elena. I didn't call Denise. I didn't accuse anyone. Instead, I made a decision. I would let them believe they still had control. Because if Elena, Marcus, and Denise thought I knew nothing, they would continue making mistakes. The next morning, Elena came into the kitchen. "Martha, can I talk to you?" I looked at her. "Of course." She sat down. "I feel like you have been distant." I stayed quiet. "Did I do something wrong?" I looked into her eyes. The old Martha would have immediately comforted her. The old Martha would have apologized. But I was no longer that woman. I think everyone should be honest with the people they love. Her expression changed slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means trust is important." She stared at me, then she smiled. "I agree." But something in her eyes told me she knew. She knew something had changed, and she knew I was no longer as easy to fool. That night, I received another message from Jason. It was a screenshot, a conversation between Elena and Marcus. The message from Elena said, "Martha is becoming suspicious." Marcus replied, "Then we need to move before she finds everything." I stared at those words. Before she finds everything. but what they didn't understand was this. I was no longer searching blindly, I was prepared, and I was about to discover the real reason they wanted everything I had built. The moment I read Marcus Reed's message, I knew the time for waiting was almost over. Then we need to move before she finds everything. Those words stayed in my mind. They were no longer just hiding something. They were worried. And people who are worried often make mistakes. For the first time since this began, I felt something different. I felt prepared. I was no longer the woman sitting in confusion, wondering if she was imagining things. I was a mother trying to protect her son. I was a woman protecting the life she and her husband had spent decades building. The next morning, I called Jason. Jason, I need to know everything. He was quiet. Mrs. Williams, are you sure? Yes. I had reached the point where the truth, no matter how painful, was better than living with questions. I need to know what Elena, Marcus, and Denise were planning. Jason agreed to help. A few days later, he called me back. Mrs. Williams, I found the information. I sat down. Tell me. He took a deep breath. The documents they were discussing were related to transferring control over some of your assets. My heart sank. They wanted me to sign something. Yes. I thought about every conversation Elena had with me. Every time she suggested I needed less responsibility. Every time she talked about how difficult maintaining a large home could become. She wasn't giving advice. She was preparing me. What about Marcus? Jason continued. Marcus had financial problems. He was looking for a way to recover money he lost. And Denise? Denise had connections in property and financial services. She knew how to prepare the paperwork. Everything finally started making sense. They weren't after my love. They weren't after my family. They were after what my husband and I built. The house, the investments, the security we created for our future. But there was still one question. Why Elena? Why would she help them? That was the part I couldn't understand. Because even if someone wants money, betraying your own family is a choice. That evening, I asked Elena to sit with me. She looked surprised. Is everything okay? I nodded. I just want to talk. She sat across from me. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I asked, Elena, have you ever felt unhappy in this family? Her expression changed. What kind of question is that? A serious one. She looked away. Martha, I don't know why you are asking me this. Because I think there are things you haven't told me. She became defensive. I don't know what you mean. I looked at her. You know exactly what I mean. The room became quiet. For the first time, Elena looked afraid. Not angry, afraid, Martha. I know about Marcus. Her face changed. I saw it. A moment of shock before she tried to hide it. I don't know what you're talking about. I continued. I know about the messages. She became silent. I know about the documents. Her eyes filled with emotion. How? I didn't answer. Because the question wasn't important. The truth was. Why, Elena? That was the only question I needed answered. Why would you do this? For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she looked down, and when she finally spoke, her voice was different. Not the confident woman I had known. Not the woman who always had the perfect answer, a broken person. Things are not as simple as you think. I shook my head. Then explain. She wiped her eyes. I made mistakes. Mistakes? She looked at me. I was desperate. I listened. Before David, I had financial problems. Marcus helped me. I thought I could trust him. I stayed quiet. But years later, he came back. He said he had information about your family. He knew about your house and your investments. My heart hurt. And you listened? She looked away. I didn't think it would go this far. I almost couldn't believe those words. You didn't think it would go this far? I looked at her. You allowed someone to study my life. You allowed people to prepare documents about my property. You hid things from David. She started crying. I love David, I answered quietly. If you truly loved him, you would not have put him in this position. That sentence hurt her, but it was the truth. Later that night, David came home. He knew something had happened. He looked at Elena. Mom told me. Elena froze. The pain on David's face was something I will never forget. Is it true? She couldn't answer, and that silence told him everything. Elena. Her eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to hurt you, David shook his head. But you did. There are moments in life when words are not enough. Moments when apologies cannot erase what happened. That was one of those moments. For years, David believed he had built a marriage based on love and trust. Now he was discovering that someone he trusted had hidden an entire part of herself from him. But the story was not over, because there was still Marcus Reed, there was still Denise Harper, and there was still one final piece of the truth, the part Elena had not yet revealed. The reason they believed they could get away with everything. And when I discovered it, I finally understood how far they had planned this. After everything came out, I thought the hardest part was over. I thought discovering Elena's secret would be the moment that broke our family. But I was wrong. The hardest part was accepting that the people involved were not strangers. They were people who had sat at my table. People who had laughed with me. People who had called me family. The next few days were some of the most difficult days of my life. Our house, which was once filled with comfort and memories, felt different. David was quiet. Elena was staying in another room, and I spent most of my time thinking about how everything had reached that point. I kept asking myself one question: how did we get here? But sometimes life does not give you answers immediately. Sometimes you have to walk through the pain before you understand the lesson. A week after the confrontation, Jason called me. "Mrs. Williams, there is something else you need to know." I closed my eyes. Because every time Jason called, my life changed. "What is it?" I found the final connection between Marcus and Denise. I sat down. "What connection?" "They weren't only working together recently." I waited. "They had been discussing your family for years." Years, that word hurt, because it meant this wasn't a sudden decision. It wasn't a mistake made overnight. There had been time to think, time to plan, time to stop. But they didn't. "Why?" I asked. Jason answered carefully. "Because they believed your kindness made you easy to influence." Those words stayed with me. They thought kindness was weakness. They thought because I forgave people, I would never question them. They thought because I loved my family, I would never protect myself. They were wrong. I asked Jason one more question. "Was Elena involved from the beginning?" There was a pause. Then he answered, "Yes." That answer hurt more than anything, because a small part of me was still hoping Elena had been pulled into something she didn't understand. But now I knew. She had made choices, and choices have consequences. Later that evening, David and I sat together in the living room. For the first time in days, we talked honestly. "Mom," he said quietly, "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed." I looked at him. "Don't blame yourself." But I trusted her. Trusting someone you love does not make you foolish. He looked at me. "It just hurts." I nodded. "Yes, it does." David looked around the house. "This place means so much to you." I smiled sadly. "It means so much because of the memories." He nodded. "And I almost let someone take it from you." I held his hand. "You didn't." That was something I needed him to understand. My son was not responsible for another person's choices. A few days later, Marcus finally reached out. He wanted to explain. At first, I didn't want to hear anything. But David asked me to listen. "Sometimes hearing the truth directly helps you heal," he said. So I agreed. Marcus came to the house. For the first time, I saw the person behind all the messages. He did not look powerful. He did not look like someone who had everything figured out. He looked like someone who had made terrible choices. "I know I hurt your family," he said. I looked at him. "You did." He lowered his head. "I made mistakes." I answered, "Mistakes are things you regret after they happen. What you did required many decisions." He had no answer, because that was the truth. One bad decision can happen in a moment, but deception requires many choices. Marcus admitted that he and Denise had convinced Elena that everything would work out. They told her nobody would get hurt. They told her the documents would simply make things easier. But the reality was different. They were trying to control something that was never theirs: my home, my future, my family's trust. In the end, the greatest thing they lost was not money. It was respect. And respect is something that cannot be bought back. Months passed. Slowly, our family began healing. Not perfectly, not instantly. But honestly, David had to rebuild his life after discovering the truth about his marriage. I had to learn that protecting my heart did not mean closing it, and Elena had to face the consequences of her choices. Our relationship was never the same. Some wounds take time. Some trust takes years to rebuild. But I learned something important. Family is not only about sharing a last name. Family is about honesty. Family is about loyalty. Family is about protecting each other even when no one is watching. Looking back, I still think about that day I carried Elena's broken phone into Jason Reed's repair shop. At the time, I thought I was taking a damaged device to be repaired. I didn't know that day would reveal the damage hidden inside my own family. That phone exposed a secret. But it also gave me something else. It gave me the chance to protect my son. It gave me the strength to stand up for myself. And it reminded me that age does not make a person powerless. Sometimes the wisdom we gain through life is the very thing that helps us survive its hardest moments. I lost the illusion that everyone who smiles at you truly cares about you, but I gained something more valuable, the ability to see clearly. And today, when I look around my home, I no longer see a place that someone tried to take from me. I see a place where I survived, a place where my family learned the importance of truth, a place where I discovered that even when people underestimate you, you can still find the strength to protect everything you love.